Howdy everyone, and welcome to Runt9 Review's Journey of Greed. Journey of Greed is a digital tabletop game that combines elements of collectible card games and pre-constructed deck building with a fast-moving, social deduction, push your luck kind of board game style in, just a really bright, colorful, fairly clean kind of game. And, there's a lot of different mechanisms. The game moves very quickly. There's, you can play against computer opponents, or you can play online, whether it be casual or ranked against other people. They're always 4-player games, so you will never have a situation where the game changes a little bit based on how many people are in the game. It's always 4 people. So, there's a lot to kind of digest when you're looking at Journey of Greed. And so how about we jump right into a little bit of gameplay and commentary? And then here in a few minutes, I will come back and tell you my thoughts on Journey of Greed. See you in just a few moments. Okay, let's take a look a little bit at what Journey of Greed has to offer. So this is your main menu, and there's a few different places that you can go. And we'll take a quick look at the options menu. Not a lot of stuff going on. You wouldn't expect a whole heck of a lot for a digital tabletop game, but you got some basic stuff to work with. And, you have your full screen, maximize window, all that kind of stuff. And then you've got your help and manual, and you can replay the tutorial. All good stuff to have. You've got some practice, you got some daily quests, friends list, your deck building piece, treasure store, barrels, all that stuff. Barrels is where you crack your packs, and you have barrels for the island cards and for your deck. We're not necessarily going to jump into any of that. We're actually just going to embark and get right into a casual match. We're going to play against players, and so you can't set any of these settings. One thing of note is that I recommend playing against bots with fast mode turned off initially, because it helps a lot in learning the game to be able to actually pay attention to what other people are doing. And so I'll probably cut this queue time out, and then I will see you once we get into the game here. All right, so we just got the queue popped. It was like just shy of 40 seconds. I want to say it was like right at the 39-second mark. And so you have an opportunity to ready up here, and then you start out, and this is just like a random card selection to see where you are in the initial order. So this is Journey of Greed. You've got these islands laid out. You've got a really fast turn timer, and let's just play that. Basically, the way it works is you've got these islands, and you have an island deck. And the game is going to go really fast. I'll try to explain what I can. The island deck, which are these cards right here that tell you what happens on a given island, is made up of the island cards from all 4 players. So you kind of get a chance to choose what goes in your island deck in your deck building piece. In addition to the cards down here, all come from your personal card deck, and that's separate from the island deck. So basically you choose, I think it's like 6 or 8 islands that go into your island deck. All 4 players' island decks get shuffled together and laid out to create this island path. There's 3 different sections, and at the end of each section is a rest site. So there's the first one. Hold on, we have a choice to make here. We will go ahead and rest and heal some HP. And hide that. There's the second rest site, and then you've got the third rest site, which is actually the end of the islands. And so during each section, there's higher difficulty or higher tiers of island cards. In addition, you have your own personal deck of cards that does, various different things. And basically on each of your turn, what you're going to do is you're going to choose, do I want to play a card from my hand? If you play a card from your hand, then that card will just go into effect on your turn and do something. And if you choose not to play a card, then that's obviously perfectly fine. You certainly can do that. And just wait and see what the island card is. Each island can be one of 3 different colors. It can be green, which is good, also known as fortune. It can be red, which is bad, and that's also known as a misfortune. And then it can be black, which is a neutral site, but is also bad. In most of the time, like in this case, this was a volcano that dealt 1 damage to all players. So on green islands, most of the time, there is loot there. And so you can kind of see up here, each player has the number of HP. There's a maximum of 7, and you cannot overheal. You have your current coins on this round, and then you have your banked coins. No, I don't say any of that. Your banked coins, and you can see this player just escaped, and we'll talk about escaping in a minute, but he has banked these coins, and he is safe. And what that means is those 60 coins cannot be taken from him. You see, you have HP, and if at any point during a round you die, you lose all of the coins that you currently have on you. And that's the push your luck mechanism that I was kind of talking about before. And so like this person escaped, they banked their coins, and obviously making sure that you escape with some coins is beneficial. I haven't really been playing particularly well, so I didn't get many coins to start with. I'm very much in last place here. Let's draw 2 cards here. When you get to a rest site, you also automatically bank all the coins that you have. There's another benefit to escaping though. You've noticed on some of these green islands, there's stacks of coins and there are gold bars. Stacks of coins means that it is split among all active players. That is basically any player who hasn't died or escaped yet. Gold bars, so like this is a split. We're gonna split 25 equally amongst the players. In this case, he had an ability that caused him to not split it, but and so in that case, it would usually get split amongst all active players. Gold bars basically drop on the ground. And those, the first player to escape picks up all of those on their way out and banks that gold as well. And so not just is there a push your luck mechanism, but there's also the mechanism of I want to be the first player to escape to pick up everything that's on the ground. Keeping in mind that if more stuff drops on the ground ahead of you after you escape, you're gonna miss out on that opportunity. So this is a choice. We can either lose a certain amount of gold or split 60 coins and take 5 damage. I'm fine taking 5 damage here. And you know, we haven't been focusing very much on the coins that you have, or the cards that we have, and that's mostly just because the game has to move very quickly. I'll talk a lot about the turn timers in my review portion, but we'll, I am at the far right, so I will heal. The other thing is you'll see on the turn timer, it's either red, green, or white. And that lets you know in the next 3 upcoming islands, what is the majority color. So if this is green, in this case it's red actually, that means of the 3 upcoming islands, the majority of them are red. And what that could mean is red and 2 black. It could mean 2 red, 1 green, whatever the case may be. It means that the majority are red. In this case, a black island came up, and so I'm pretty sure that this island is going to be red. And that's where some of the deduction part of trying to guess or guaranteeing what the next islands are going to be can come in really handy. So I only took 1 damage, or no, I took 4 damage there. I guess there was extra damage because I had negative defense. So I actually died there. And so there's a lot going on. I think for the most part, you've probably got a little bit of a feel for the game. We're going to go ahead and just wrap up the gameplay here. But basically, we're going to go through one more round of working through the islands up to the end here. I have very much lost this game. There is a chance for a comeback, but it's highly, highly unlikely. Just assume that I've lost at this point. But hopefully that's given you just a little tiny inkling of a feeling of what this game's got going on. And I know that I didn't do the best job explaining it. And again, partly there's some UI quirks. This turn timer moves very quickly, and there's a lot of pressure. And I'm going to talk a lot about it here in a minute. But again, that's the gameplay. So how about I start telling you what I think about Journey of Greed? All right, welcome back. Hopefully you enjoyed that look at the gameplay of Journey of Greed. We went through a whole match there, and so you kind of got to see what the turn inks looks like, some of the different mechanisms at play, how the game scales as you get later in a given match, how quick the turns are, all those types of things. And so what we're going to do is we're going to jump into my cards review system. If you still don't know what the cards review system is, make sure you check out the link in the description below where I introduce the review format for this channel. So we're going to jump right in and start off with the core gameplay loop for Journey of Greed. And so the core gameplay loop in Journey of Greed is basically the concept of a single game. You go through the process of pre-constructing your deck, you go into a game, and turn by turn, you choose whether or not to play a card, whether or not you want to escape, and you collect gold or you take damage, you try to, deduce what the next islands are going to be. You're going through the process of, kind of working with the other players, but also working against the other players of, are they going to keep pressing on? How's the splitting going to work? All that kind of stuff. When do I escape and collect all the gold that's on the ground? The thing is, to me, I kind of fell into the trap that some of these games tend to fall into, and that I felt like it plays itself. And that's why I'm giving the core gameplay loop a C+. And I know that's a pretty rough rating for basically the ultimate underlying fun value of a video game. But let me explain my thought process behind this C+. You very much will end up in a situation where either you don't have a card that's worth playing, or you only have one card that realistically makes sense. Once you get a little bit further along, deducing the islands is actually a pretty simple and straightforward process, or you don't have enough information to deduce. And unfortunately, as much as I would like to say that there is that element of social deduction, and I see why there should be, it doesn't translate well in a game where the turn timers are so short. You don't really have a chance to do like the table talk that you would in person during a social deduction board game. And honestly, the social deduction aspect ended up being worse for the game than better, because of the fact that you can't utilize it to your advantage. So you're basically just guessing based off of what other players are doing. I honestly don't feel like the element is as strong as it could be. I've played quite a few matches of this game at this point, mostly just trying to grok the mechanics, understand the different deck building aspects and things like that. And I just don't really find it that fun. And it's a shame, because I love board games. You see the collection right there behind me. And I think this is a game that would, with a few modifications, translate so much better to in person than it does on a computer. Or if you were in voice chat with a few friends playing this game and there were no turn timers. I think the turn timer works against this game. I know why there's turn timers. Absolutely, you don't want people taking 10 minutes to figure out, okay, what card am I going to play? But I also can't imagine that happening because there's really not that much strategy. For the most part, it's, hey, this is the best card to play in this situation, I'm going to just play it. Or, I don't have any cards to play right now because it's a bunch of red islands and I've got only things that are going to help me on green islands. And a lot of times, it doesn't strike me as something that I want to keep coming back to, that is fun and encourages the experimentation with the different decks and whatnot. There's a lot going on in the game, and I see the potential of what it could have become. Honestly, I think the digital format and the turn timers really hold back what could potentially be a really fantastic game. And so now we're going to move on to the atmosphere of the game. I actually think the atmosphere is reasonably decent. You know, there's the graphic style, I think, does the game very, very well. You know, that was a vaguely English sentence, but I'm actually going to use that to transition into my next point, in that, you know, because this game is translated from Chinese to English, there are some mistranslations, there's some UI bugs, and you know, if you do end up in a situation where online chat is actually happening, you will end up in a situation where if you don't speak Chinese, you know, you may be English speaking only, you might not be able to communicate with the other players. And even though I think the immersion and the graphics of the game are pretty good, the sound is thoroughly uninspired. There's a lot of times where splitting gold will stack the sounds up and end up causing this loud burst of sound that, you know, rip headphone users kind of thing. And so there's a lot of pluses and a lot of minuses, and that's why I'm giving the atmosphere a B minus. There's plenty of room to improve. There's also a lot of detractors. And I don't think it's a bad thing that a large majority of the player base is Chinese if you speak Chinese. And that's just purely the only concern there. And that kind of takes away from the immersion of the social deduction aspect that I kind of talked about in core gameplay loop. There's other immersion issues there. But for me, in a social deduction game, you need to be able to communicate. You need to be able to talk about what you're doing, what the other players are thinking, how you can trick them, how you can, you know, do a little bit of backstabbery. So that kind of takes away from it. You know, the UI bugs, they cause some issues, and, you know, again, it takes away from the immersion aspect. Like I said, I think the graphics are really well done. I think for the most part it's clean and simple, but I'm going to go back to the turn timers here. The turn timers don't give you enough time to read the cards, understand what's going on, piece together what you're doing, and it kind of makes you just sit back and say, okay, whatever, I'm just gonna throw cards out there and see what happens. And to me, that takes away from feeling immersed in a game like I could. I think the theme is great. You know, you're island hopping, you're trying to investigate all these hidden areas. There's a lot of danger. You could end up getting hit by or having to run away from a volcano erupting, and you're journeying into a temple and finding tons and tons of loot. Like, that's great. The theme is solid. The sound design is uninspired. You lose a lot of immersion for a lot of different reasons. The UI is bad. The tutorial is bad. And I also just feel like there's a lot of mechanics going on in the game, and it makes it really hard to learn this game. There's a high barrier of entry, even though once you get used to it, you're like, oh, this game is actually really simple, but it doesn't feel simple when you first start playing it. And so again, that's why I'm giving the atmosphere that B minus. Moving right along to replayability, though, this I actually think is one of the biggest positives of the game. And I mean, a big part of it is because it's a collectible card game. I'm going to give the replayability a B plus here. Even though I may not necessarily be encouraged to continue replaying this game, I see where the replayability is in this game. There's a lot of cards to collect. There's different archetypes that you can play with. You know, there's a lot of unlocks. There's pack cracking. I mean, you gotta love throwing those barrels and getting new cards. You know, there's different rarities of cards, so it has the same aspect that booster pack cracking has in every other collectible card game ever made. So it has all of those elements. It encourages experimentation. You know, I bring the replayability down a little bit, mostly because I go back to the core gameplay loop where I feel like the game plays itself a little bit. I think that once you get used to the experimentation, it'll lose some of that luster of I want to try different combinations, because you're probably going to find a strategy that is either overpowered or just works for you, or just, you know, works against anything that people are going to throw at you. But overall, because it's a collectible card game, because it has a lot of stuff in the game, and because it's online, you're playing against different players every time, all of those are good replayability elements. I felt like the matchmaking was fairly well done. You got into matches quickly. And because of how quick the matches are, you know, you're maybe only 15, 20 minutes to go through a match. I think that all aids the replayability. It's just, I can't quite put it in any of those A tiers because of the fact that I think that it can grow stale quickly because of the limited amount of strategy involved in the game, and the fact that this, I'm going to keep talking about those turn timers. When you're playing very quickly online, you don't have time to do the social deduction aspect. And I think if that social deduction aspect was just a bigger part of the game, almost every single one of these ratings would be higher, including that B+ in replayability. And now for difficulty, it's kind of hard to rate the difficulty of this game. Now, I've played a few bot matches, I've played a few matches online. I feel like the balance of the cards is fairly well done. They do patches for balance changes. And so I don't necessarily feel like that there's overpowered strategies. Again, I kind of talked about how I don't feel like there's really that much strategy at all anyways. But I'm going to give the difficulty a B. I don't think that there's a lot of negatives, but there's also not a lot of positives. It kind of falls right in that middle of the road kind of situation, where I think that the difficulty curve is good. I think, you can pretty easily win against the AI, but this really isn't a game where you're going to be playing against the AI a lot anyways. I felt like the matchmaking was fairly solid. I was able to go in and do well in a couple of games. I was able to go in, play against a couple people who had some pretty solid decks, and they did better. It has a lot of that collectible card game feel. You go into Hearthstone in your very first match online, if you end up against somebody who has a bunch of legendaries, like, you're going to get your butt kicked. And so it has a little bit of that, but it also throws the cards at you fairly quickly. So you can really get in there and have fun. And by it being a 4-person board game instead of, a 1v1, that difficulty of, hey, their decks are better than mine is kind of diminished just a little bit, because they might do a lot of messing with each other and you can just kind of skirt the edges, push your luck, and, just outmaneuver them regardless of how good their decks might be. So I don't think there's a lot of things wrong with the difficulty. I don't feel like there's a lot of things right with the difficulty. The balance seems decent. I just don't really have a lot to say about it. I don't think that there's really enough different metrics that I can judge the difficulty on. But from what I can tell, it's decent, it's solid. There's not a lot of stuff that I can really say about it. That's why I'm going to just put it right there in the middle at that B. And then lastly, we're going to talk about the support of the game. So it came out in early access in middle of October of last year. And so we haven't had a ton of time to see what the developer is doing, but it seems like they're reasonably consistent with some balance patches and minor additions here and there. So I'm giving the support a B. I think that so far the support is decent, but I want to see more additions. I want to see them try to work on the tutorial, clean up more UI bugs. I think them having a better English translator on their team would go a long way towards engaging that more international audience. Translating into more languages would also be beneficial. I feel like that there's a lot more support they could be doing for the game. Again, I think more additions would be better. They've done a decent job with patches and bug fixes and balance patches and things like that. And that's why, I'm certainly not detracting from the support. I think the support is totally fine. They're not doing anything wrong. I just think they could do a lot better. And that's really all I have to say about support. I don't think that there is a lot to say about it because, it is a fairly short term that we're looking at, just a few months here. But so far, it's definitely totally fine. And so just to summarize, we had core gameplay loop at a C+, we had atmosphere at a B-, replayability at a B+, difficulty at a B, and support at a B. And so that leads us into my final tier ranking for Journey of Greed. And I think you can kind of tell that there was a lot of middle of the road stuff here. And so that's why I'm going to drop this right into my mediocre tier. Do I think that Journey of Greed is a bad game? That's an absolutely definitive no. But do I think it's a good game? I'm going to have to say I don't know. I'm not going to say no, it's not a good game, because there are going to be people who enjoy just the relaxing, very easy, smooth feeling, the quick turns, and the collectible nature of it. I think there are people who are going to enjoy that. And I mean, if I glance over here, 95% of the 779 user reviews on Steam are positive. That gives it an overwhelmingly positive ranking. And it feels bad for me to kind of go against that. But if we were talking from a do I recommend this game perspective, not really. I know who I would recommend it to, and I think anyone who is into board games should at the very least give it a try. At least at the moment in early access, it's coming in at that $7 price point on Steam. $7 is not a lot to give a game a shot. And that's one of the big reasons I picked it up is I really had no excuse not to. It's a digital board game. I should be really into it one reason or another. But the funny thing is, I have found that a lot of the digital board games don't really strike me that hard. Anti-Hero ended up being solid, I believe. I really didn't play Gremlins Inc. enough because the first couple games I played of it, it really just didn't seem that impressive to me. And now Journey of Greed is coming in that mediocre tier for me. So I don't know what it is. I feel like that with the capabilities that you have with a computer processing a lot of things behind the scenes, that digital board games should be better than they are. I think Armello is another example of one that I just didn't find that captivating. And yet when it comes time to play these board games, I find a lot more that are really, really good and get even better when you put an app behind them, whether it be a version on Steam or something that I can throw up on my phone, play while I'm lying in bed, relaxing, watching TV, or, I'm on an airplane or something like that. Digital adaptations of board games that already exist seem to be better. And this is something that I'm going to criticize Journey of Greed on, and I'm going to criticize a lot of digital board games on, is that because there's not these limitations, I feel like the designs get lazy. And I hate to say that. And this is not purely a Journey of Greed problem. This is a digital board game thing in general. I think the designs get a little bit lazy. And a large part of that is, hey, because we're on a computer, let's just start throwing mechanics together instead of really fine-tuning the player interaction. And that's my biggest gripe against Journey of Greed, is one of the first things you see in the Steam description. This is a perfect hybrid of social board game and strategy card game. You cut the strategy or the social aspect out of the game by having these 15-second turn timers when you're playing online. How do I have time to interact with other players and talk about, are you going to escape? What if we don't escape? If you escape this turn, then I'm going to keep going forward. I want to talk. I want to communicate. I want to talk about, what are you going to play? I'll play this. Let's create these alliances. It's a free-for-all. I want to create alliances. I want to stab each other in the back. I want to talk about, when are we escaping? I won't do damage this turn, blah, blah, blah. There's so many options for social deduction, and you ruined it. I hate putting this in the mediocre tier because I see the potential of this game. It could have ended up probably in the special tier. If you took turn timers out of this game, and I don't know how to say it. I don't necessarily need voice chat in the game, but better channels of communication, better ways to see what's going on. Like, the islands fly by so quickly, the cards fly by so quickly. You didn't need to make the game as fast as it is. If that wasn't the way the game is, at the very least, this would be in my solid tier, if not special. But as it sits now, I can't recommend Journey of Greed. I think if you pick it up on sale, and I mean, again, it's $7. Really, you don't need it to go on sale by that much. But pick it up for $2 or $3, something like that. Spend a few hours in it. See if it's something that you're into. For me, it really didn't tickle my fancy. It's not something that I see myself going back to. I'm fine keeping it in my collection. Absolutely. I wouldn't refund this game. It's not bad. I only refund bad games. And I think the developer deserves more time to fine-tune the game. But I think the underlying mechanisms for me don't escalate it to a point where I think this is a good game. It's just also not a bad game. And that's why I'm putting Journey of Greed in my mediocre tier. But all that said, I think that's where I'm going to leave this one off. Once again, I really wanted to like this game. I didn't. And, you know, that's going to be something that happens with some games. And I think that this is my first mostly negative review that I'm putting up on this channel. And I want to hopefully feel like these were more constructive criticisms and things that showed these were my opinions. And, you know, definitely let me know your feedback on this review. It's even more important on more negative reviews than positive reviews, because I want to know, how did you feel I handled this situation when I was putting forth my opinions on why I think this game is one that I couldn't necessarily recommend. So likes, dislikes, comments, at Runt9 Plays on Twitter, all good ways to get in contact with me. Let me know what you thought about this review and let me know why I'm wrong. Because again, overwhelmingly positive reviews on Steam. It didn't hit that mark for me. So let me know what you think about this game. I'd love to hear from you. Otherwise, I think that's going to do it for now. So until the next Runt9 reviews, I'm Runt9, and I will see you later.